Playing Possum Podcast.
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 Playing Possum Podcast. So I was reading your Substack this morning. I've read it before, but I was reading the ambidextrous. How do you say that word?
Ambidextrous. I think the title, ambidextrosity.
Oh, ambidextrosity. What? Don't have it, but I love reading that post of that you can do I love the backstory about how you learned how to be ambidextrous while being a baker. And that was kind of and I'm sure Casey could probably chime in here because Casey, you did kitchen work for a long time too, right?
Yeah, totally. And a very unsuccessful stint as a banker.
It's because you couldn't be ambidextrous and crack 2 eggs with 2 hands. That's the best part of that story.
Yeah. Also, I think I just have the energy of a line cook. So slowing down for baking was just what do you mean we can't be violent?
I know. I felt that or not bad, but I guess it was a few days ago. I was cracking eggs, a bunch of eggs for something I was making, and I realized I've gotten really bad at cracking eggs. So I may have lost some of my skill at the double hand crack, which is too bad.
Oh man,
have to practice it again.
Yeah. You've drained all your skills and moved them into woodworking for your ambidextrousness.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, welcome to the podcast. This is, I have no idea what number episode this is, but we have a really fun guest on here. It's a friend of mine, Duncan Ellinwood, and he is a chair maker, but I'm going to have you introduce yourself, Duncan, and
Sure.
But Duncan and I know each other from the woodworking community in Corvallis.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Kat, and excited to be here. I am also a little honored. I feel like I listened recently to the last 2 episodes with your kind of other guests recently, and there has been a lot of really cool people on the podcast. So I guess anyone who hasn't listened to those yet should go back and listen to them. And then I guess a little bit about me. Yeah, I guess I have maybe kind of a circuitous wandering background. So I guess maybe kind of starting back with baking. So I think after graduating high school, I grew up in Utah, and then kind of on a bit of a whim moved to Portland, Oregon, and was curious and interested in baking and pastry, and so started working at a bakery there and really enjoyed that. I did a lot of bread and all their viennoiserie, which is laminated pastries like croissants and stuff. And during that time, I started getting really into chocolate, just kind of on my own at first. I was just, kind of interested and curious about it, and started doing a little bit of work just on my own for fun. And then I got a few kind of cool opportunities, but I was really lucky that the baker I worked at, the head pastry chef really wanted to have a chocolate company. And so they kind of, with the bakery, they decided to start one. And so I helped them kind of get that, up and running, which was really fun. And I think I was really lucky. It was fairly early on in the days of what's called bean to bar chocolate making. So actually making chocolate, starting from the beans kind of through the whole process of turning them into chocolate, which was really cool. And I think the thing that I was really lucky for kind of getting into it early is that a lot of farmer cooperatives and kind of, groups in countries that were growing cocoa were starting to get interested in, making chocolate there rather than just exporting their beans. And so I think I was young and very willing to travel to foreign countries and had maybe just enough experience to help teach them how to make chocolate. And so kind of through kind of connections, I ended up spending some time in Fiji and a few other places kind of working with farmers to build or to, make chocolate. And I spent a lot of time working with this company in Haiti, kind of helping them get up and running. And up until I guess last year, I was still helping them with some product development stuff as well, which is fun. But anyway, so then after that, I guess I guess kind of through that, I think I realized I should maybe go to school and get some sort of degree, in part because I was trying to apply for opportunities to help fund some projects with those groups I wanted to do, and you needed at least a bachelor's. So I decided initially to go to school to be a microbiologist because I was really interested in the fermentation of cocoa. which is one of the major kind of processes that creates the flavor of it kind of at origin. After it's grown, they harvest and then ferment it. So I did that, and then I guess I got a little bit lost somewhere along the way. I think kind of lost a lot of my chocolate connections, and I kind of got it really into chemistry, and so I think at the end of undergrad, like probably many people, didn't really know what to do next, so decided to go to grad school because, why not? Anyway, so I started a PhD in chemistry, but pretty quickly realized academia was really not the place for me, so dropped out. Or mastered out, I guess is how we like to call it to make ourselves feel better about it. And so then I think, after that, had been working in the pharmaceutical industry for a number of years. And then it was kind of at that time that I finally kind of started getting into woodworking. And really initially I think I'd always kind of been interested. I really liked woodworking as an idea. Like, I don't know, maybe just because the romanticized version of it, I think is so fun and pretty. But I think finally had a little bit of space and a little bit of, time to actually start working a little bit. And more, it was just at that point to start replacing a bunch of the crappy IKEA furniture we had that had moved back and forth across the country a few times and was in pretty rough shape. And so started just replacing a lot of the, like my coffee table and bedside tables and kind of all those types of things in the house. And then I guess it was, I think, kind of got to the point where it's like, well, I'd replaced most of the things in the house that I could, except the chairs. And so I was like, well, I guess I should, maybe learn how to make chairs, at least to make a couple. And at first, I think I wasn't so excited about it. It was kind of more one of those like, I should probably do this to do it. But then I think after making my first chair, I was like, this is like really fun and really cool. And so I've really kind of just been focusing on chairs for the last, I guess, year and a half or so. Kind of as the main thing I've been building. And then at this point, I guess I'm kind of in limbo. I kind of an independent consultant for chemistry stuff, I think kind of on the side, and then trying to figure out how much of my life I want to be chair making or I guess woodworking. So, and then in addition to trying to keep plenty of chocolate in there as well. So trying to figure out how to smash all the things I like together, I guess, into some sort of life, which has been kind of fun trying to figure all that out. So, yeah.
That's lovely. And one of the things that I had noticed when I was going through your Substack, which I would love to pick your brain about Substack sometime, was that your brand of woodworking and your beautiful name, Duncan Ellinwood, like they mesh so perfectly together. Because I was looking at these chairs and it's like the perfect kitchen chair you'd find in like a rustic cabin where it's like whimsical and delicate and kind of makes you feel fuzzy inside. And I was wondering like how you had come to that sort of style. Was it something that had developed over time, or was it like a point that you're working towards?
I guess so I guess in the world chair making, there's like a ton of different styles, and I think I guess especially a lot of people are drawn to like the vernacular kind of styles from around the world, and so a lot of what I first started making are often referred to as like Welsh stick chairs. And so it's a style that was kind of developed in Wales, and originally it was just kind of people, farmers and I don't know, kind of whatever, making them in their home kind of out of whatever they had around. And so I think they did have a very kind of rustic kind of feel. And I think in part because I have a pretty limited tool set. I guess, I have mostly a hand tool workshop. And a fairly, or at this point it's not so limited, but when I was starting chairs, it's pretty limited. And so I think I was really drawn to that form because it is very conducive to building with a really limited tool set and without much specialized tools. And so I think I kind of started there, and then it was just kind of a process of I read a lot of books. I really enjoy learning from books, and so I think just found a ton of books on all sorts of different types of chairs from different kind of parts of the world and other things like that. And I feel like every time I would read a new one, I'd be like, oh, this is my new favorite type of chair. Like these are all so cool. And so pretty quickly, I think I've kind of just started mashing together all those different designs and ideas that I like. And so, so I think it has been, kind of trying to draw on, I guess, a lot of historical forms I liked, and then a lot of trying to experiment and mash together all the different things kind of within that world I like, to kind of get to the current style, which I think it's still pretty experimental. I think especially this year, I feel like every chair I've made has been very, very different than the last one. So I think still exploring a lot, which is really fun.
Yeah, totally. They are just so interesting, and people that are listening can find Duncan on Substack, and there's a whole collection of various chairs. And it looks like you were working on a set that was based around like ladders, like maybe it looked like almost like the steps of like a library ladder.
Yeah. So those are called like ladder backs. Yeah, since it's kind of like rungs up the posts. And those ones. Yeah, so I guess in the chairs, traditionally it's like things are majorly divided between kind of Windsor chairs and then post and rung chairs. Windsor chairs are usually it'll have like some solid slab seat, and then the legs are mortised into that, or basically pass through that, and then the spindles or everything holding up the back pass through it. I guess kind of like the one here where it's like a solid seat. And then the other major style is called post and rung, which is much more like an open framework, where it's usually like a woven seat. So it's a lot of like the shaker style chairs. Yeah, and I've been wanting to get into making those post and rung chairs, which are often called also ladder backs. But I didn't quite have the setup for it. And I was like, well, why can't I just make a ladder back kind of Windsor chair or stick chair? And so started playing around with that form. And I think it's been fun. It definitely just poses a new set of challenges. I feel like every time I think of a new type of chair, it's just a lot of complex angles and trying to figure out how to get things to come together kind of in space in a new fun way. And so those ones have definitely been a challenge. The kind of ladder back stick chairs, I guess I've been calling them. So, but it's, I don't know. It always feels good because it feels like I'm still pushing my skills, which is, I guess, kind of nice.
Hearing you talk about sort of your experience starting in chocolate, like I was sort of thinking about how it's really similar in some ways to woodworking. Like I think sometimes it's like, I heard you say like a very circuitous route, and I can just really identify with that as someone who has had 37 jobs and as an adult and has been in many different career fields of, I think sometimes it can feel like, oh, well, like I can't decide on what to do, or like, I think, or that like, I think sometimes there's this, I guess when we live in a capitalist society of like sort of like the idea is like you're supposed to, speaking of ladders, climb the ladder, right? And like go up. Like, so it's like you should have stayed with chocolate and kept going up or whatever, right? Or, and you did chocolate and then you moved over here and then you moved over here. And I think you and I were talking about this, but it may be our other friend Janine of like sort of, I've been thinking about this recently of like, there are people who really sort of are hierarchical thinking and like moving up, like, and like, then there's people who are more lateral movers. And so people who can kind of move laterally of like, oh, I did chocolate and now I'm going to move over here and do woodworking. And like, it's maybe a lateral move, but it's like you can kind of bring what you've learned and you're not necessarily like starting at zero, even though it's a new skill. But like if you think about kind of the way your brain was thinking about chocolate, is like you were going from this raw material, and then to this really fine, like beautiful, tasty, I love your chocolates product. I just tell Duncan all the time how much I love his chocolates, so he will continue to bring them to me. But yeah, of like, you kind of moved laterally over here to woodworking, but it's a really similar process of like kind of, and so I'm curious, like if you've thought about it that way, or if in this moment thinking about it this way, like what that, like how that sort of lands for you, or yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. I guess maybe let's see. I guess a lot of thoughts. well, yeah, I guess maybe the first thing that I thought about kind of with that is, or maybe it kind of is, rather than transferring skills, maybe it reveals kind of similarities between the two, kind of a lot about my interests. But yeah, so I guess thinking about like chocolate, initially I started just working with, finished chocolate itself, and then how to make that into truffles and bonbons and all sorts of things. Yeah, and then got really interested in the kind of bean to bar chocolate making of, okay, how do you take a step back earlier into this process to just start understanding the kind of main material you're using. And then I think kind of by gaining a better understanding of that full process, I think I was able to better kind of make, truffles and bonbons, kind of knowing kind of all the different things that you could kind of tease out of chocolate. And then also then being able to make yourself custom chocolate to then suit a specific bonbon flavor you might be interested in, I think was really revolutionary for me of like, oh, I think if you kind of take over the entire process and you can kind of really create and tinker with all these other kind of levers, which I guess I always really enjoy that. And I guess maybe I think I've been doing a similar thing with chair making recently, especially where it's, initially I was mostly just buying, kiln dried stock from the lumber yard and then kind of building and making out of that. But then recently I've been getting more into, I guess this was kind of often referred to as green woodworking, where you actually start from a log and then you're actually just splitting your components out of it. And it's really cool because then you have a lot more control rather than just getting whatever boards you can find. You have this whole log and it's much more selective of, how I want to split pieces out of this, to kind of control how the grain is running or just kind of what the sizes are or those types of things, to then be able to build chairs that I think maybe are a little bit lighter because you can get stronger components, or things like that. And so, yeah, I guess maybe kind of I learned in chocolate, I guess maybe the value of, kind of trying to look further and further back in the process to kind of give yourself more, kind of flexibility in how to create downstream. And I think kind of doing a similar thing with chairs has been really fun, where it's kind of looking further and further back to the kind of source material. How do you kind of get more information from that so that you can kind of have more creativity or more flexibility, kind of further down, I don't know, in your creative process. And I guess if I think about it, the connection I just made was it all goes back to trees. I guess chocolate grows on trees and chairs I make on trees. So maybe just everything revolves around, I just really like trees is maybe what I'm realizing.
Yes, trees.
So,
That's
yeah.
awesome. That was interesting to hear you talk about that, because I think so. Duncan and I recently, a friend of ours, Rose Holdorf, kind of got a group of us together to try to make this democratic chair by Curtis Buchanan. And I am not a chair maker, and I do not know green woodworking. And it was really interesting to me. And there were some, Duncan and then some other, and Rose and some other folks were there that were really knowledgeable. And so I got to learn a little bit about that process and like watch them sort of take the logs and splitting parts and all of that kind of stuff. And it was really interesting to sort of like have that shift in my brain of like, oh, like, yeah, like that's interesting to sort of think about, versus getting a piece of wood that's already been cut a certain way, is like you can split a log and then it's, you're especially like, when you're making these tiny spindles, is like it's really important for like the grain to all go this certain way, and that's what actually gives it strength. And I think the other thing that was interesting was like, and the whole sort of ethos behind this democratic chair is that you can make it with a few tools, kind of like what you were saying that you've been doing in your own workshop. And like I have my whole woodworking career, I've always had access to like all the tools, like all the machinery tools. And so, for me, it's like, why wouldn't you just use all the tools to make this thing? And so it was just a really interesting shift for me. And like, yeah, taking a full step back in the process and kind of understanding that. And one of the other things I've been getting interested in is steam bending. And I think that like, yeah, it was just interesting to sort of bring that piece into my brain of thinking about the material in kind of a new way. And so I'm really excited. I didn't finish my chair. Everyone else has finished their chair, but I'm still working on it, and excited to kind of learn a little bit about. I've always sort of wanted to build a chair, but it feels like such a big leap, and so I'm excited to have friends who can kind of help me along the process. But yeah, I think the other thing I was kind of curious about hearing your perspective on, and I think Casey, you can probably talk about this too, is Duncan, you've told me that you mostly have worked alone in your own workshop, and sort of this experience of like the 6 of us working on this chair together in January, and then you've started sort of getting involved in teaching a little bit with our friend Rose, and then you helped me with a class recently, a hand tool class, and at Highland, and so this is kind of a new experience for you to sort of make things in community. And so I'm curious, how that, what do you feel like, I guess, just how that experience has been. And, we've talked a little bit about it, but I'm curious to hear your perspective. And then I think also, Casey, you've been coming to Highland recently. So I'm curious, because I think my experience is really different, is like, I actually really struggle to spend time alone in my shop, and I'm like, where are my friends? Because my first job out of college was like traveling in community as a backpacking guide, and like I have done so much in community, and like I actually I'm not very good at doing things alone, and so I think that's something I need to shift. But I think I'm just curious of the sort of opposite perspective.
Yeah. I think I guess most of my woodworking career was really solitary. I think I was living in Colorado, and just I think I literally didn't know a single other woodworker. So it really just felt like, a person in the garage kind of puttering away alone, tinkering around with tools, which I think was good, and I got a lot done, and I do really enjoy kind of alone time in the workshop. I do really value that, and I think feel really productive and just really enjoy, I don't know, kind of that time to myself. But I think it was kind of really exciting to spend time with other makers. I think kind of with that group at Roses. I think that the one thing that is obvious now, but I didn't really think about, is just how nice it is to find other people who have kind of a shared vocabulary with you. I think especially for something like woodworking and chair making, where it can be so specialized, kind of in the terminology and the tools and kind of how everything works. It's really cool to kind of find people who speak the same language as you, I guess. Because I think it kind of supercharges kind of how quickly you guys can brainstorm and think about ideas and kind of, build off of each other's creativity. So I think what's been the most fun in kind of having more community now, I think, is that kind of synergistic excitement and creativity. And I think just trying to help each other problem solve. And it's just a really fun, I don't know, it kind of makes me feel more like a little kid again when you are just kind of playing make-believe or playing pretend with your friends, where it's just kind of free-flowing creativity. And, it's maybe slightly more contained in the form of, oh, how do we solve this problem of making this joint or putting these pieces together? And I think it is just such a unique type of connection with other people that I often don't feel like I get kind of, I don't know, as an adult so often. And so I think it's both fun for creativity and learning more about woodworking and doing it quicker. But then I think it's also just I don't know, I guess really nourishing for the soul of just kind of connecting with people on that level. And so it's been really, I guess it's been really fun and excited to kind of keep building that. But I don't know if you've had similar experience with that, Casey.
Yeah, I definitely agree that it feels nourishing to come to a place like Highland, for example, and be working with other people that all have similar interests and find support and skill share and things like that. For me, woodworking has always been something I've been kind of interested in on the peripherals, because I had a father who was a carpenter, and so and we didn't have much of a relationship, and so it was one of those things that I was always interested in, to feel close to him. And so when I started learning it, I was like, oh, this is really cool, and kind of drove me into it. But it's been a practice that's been interesting for me because I get so laser focused and perfectionist about things. And I think that going into woodworking, not knowing really anything, has been like a really great practice in perfection, like working on my perfectionism and like letting go of that and just like letting the mistakes happen and keep moving. And similarly with that, you know, I think when people feel like they're in a perfectionist space or like that kind of mindset, like everything is frustrating. And it's been a really great way for me to redirect my anger or like frustration into being productive. Like, for example, yesterday I was just like, I'd gone right after work. I was feeling super frustrated. I walked in there and I was like, I'm going to show all you motherfuckers. And just like banged out a couple projects that I was like half finished with. And like, and by the time I was done, by the time like 8 o'clock rolled around, I was like so calm and chill. I was like, I'm fine. What do you, yeah. I mean, I was just, it's like, the creative's version of being hangry or something.
Yeah, like that.
Oh my god, that's amazing. That's really funny.
Yeah.
And I know that, kind of, you often do, I think a lot of photography. And it seems, I mean, is there like a lot of good community in the photography kind of world? It seems like often some people will kind of often go like do trips or do kind of photography stuff together, but I don't know if that's, I don't know, just the ones you see around, or if that is kind of built in a little bit more into that, I guess maybe culture, or is that just what it seems like from the outside?
I think there's definitely people that do that. I haven't really found much like in person kind of friendship in the photography community, but I think a lot of my photography things have mostly been solo ventures anyway, because I think I'm more naturally like an introvert. But there are people that are working together and doing that kind of thing. But it hasn't been my experience necessarily, but it has been really fun. Well, I guess back when I was more involved in Instagram to like have an online community that we were all like cheering each other on. Though
Yeah.
I feel like it sounds like maybe with both of you, stepping away from Instagram has been kind of the move lately. So the photography community for me has been on the back burner a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I think, I guess kind of, it's interesting. I feel like for the longest time, I didn't really participate that much kind of in Instagram or social media. And then, I don't know, maybe the last 18 months, I think, started posting a lot more. And I was pleasantly surprised by how strong of a woodworking community there was on there. And I think at first I was very hesitant to actually engage, I don't know, kind of sincerely, because I don't know, just like on social media in general, it's kind of like, do I really want to invest a ton of energy in that? But
Sure, yeah.
I think I ended up, I don't know, interacting with a lot of people and making some friends through that. And it, I don't know, I think it was a good indication of kind of the good side of social media and kind of how, I don't know, how you can build community there. And then I guess kind of on the flip side of that, I think after maybe establishing myself and having community on Instagram, I decided it was time to delete Instagram the beginning of this year. And I think, I guess, obviously, I mean, I still have a Substack, as you guys, I think we talked about briefly earlier, and then also created a Blue Sky. So I think, I don't know, I think still trying to understand how to participate in social media in a way that kind of feels, I don't know, I guess feels fulfilling. And then I think it, obviously it's a really great tool. So I guess still kind of trying to find my way there. I don't know if you have more thoughts about that, Kat. I think we had kind of maybe a similar kind of path of in and out of Instagram recently.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. I was just thinking about it while you were talking about it. And so I deleted my Instagram later than you, and it took me longer because I think, well, I'll get into that after. But what was interesting hearing you talk about it was sort of like, it's interesting because you deleted it at the beginning of the year, and then that's when you kind of started finding like in-person community.
Yeah.
And, I think, and this is where I think I struggle really with it, is because I think because I have experienced so much in-person community, and the value of that is like, I think sometimes I really struggle with the online part of it, and it doesn't, even though I think there is some connection to it, is it just feels much more like a simulation to me of true community. And I think for me, the thing I get sucked into is like, that I don't get sucked into when I'm in in-person community, is I get sucked into like the validation, the external validation piece of it, of like, please like my stuff, or please tell me I'm good, or because I've really struggled, I think, professionally, of like, I think it's interesting because I feel like I am where I want to be professionally. Like, I have my own shop, I run a community shop in my own town, but then like, and Duncan and I have talked about this a little bit in the woodworking community, there's like, certain people who are like the people to know or whatever, of like when you're online. And so when I get online, I'm like, oh, I'm not one of those people. And I should be one of those people because, I've been doing this for 15 years, and like my peers who started around the same time are those people. But I don't actually want to be one of those
Right.
people, And so it's interesting, it's so important for me to have in-person community and local community. And so I shouldn't be putting my energy into being one of those people, because I want to work in my community. I don't want to be a traveling teacher. I want to go teach, and then I want to come home and spend the evening with my wife. And so but I think when I get online, I get really sucked into that, and then I feel bad about myself. And so that's I think why I have to step away. And but I think, like, and this is interesting, like what I've seen with you on Blue Sky, and some of the Blue Sky stuff is like, it's a little bit of a different energy that I think, it seems like you found on Instagram a little bit, and what you were talking about, Casey, of like people just sharing their work. And then like, like I found this woman in Turkey who's doing marquetry, and she gave me some advice about how to fix something. And I was like, that is so rad. Like that's the part I want of it, versus being like, that, like, and I wrote about this recently on a blog of Playing Possum, of like, there's this movie, Eurovision. Have either of y'all seen the movie Eurovision?
I think I have a long time. I vaguely remember.
Okay, well, so I'll give you like a backstory a little bit of like, so it's a Will Ferrell movie. To me, it's like his piece de la resistance of like Will Ferrell. I love Will Ferrell, but like this is the best movie. Also, Rachel McAdams, who I have like a giant crush on, is his love interest in it, which is like the whole, like, Rachel McAdams being Will Ferrell's love interest is like, obviously Will Ferrell is a producer of this movie. But anyways, it's so they like know each other from childhood, and they're in this band together, and they're trying to get to Eurovision because this is like Will Ferrell's like, and there's spoiler alerts here, people, but it's not like, if you know this, you should still watch the movie. So I'm very obsessed with Eurovision, the contest anyways, which is this worldwide contest. If you don't know what Eurovision is, ABBA won Eurovision. So it was started after World War II, and to sort of bring countries together. And it's like this song contest, and it's gotten, over the years, it's like this like sort of very gay contest, and like gay, like it's just like queer, like it's amazing. So if you don't watch it, you should watch it. It comes on in May. It's amazing. But the movie is about this contest. And so Lars, Will Ferrell's character, really wants to get to Eurovision. It's like all he can think about. And he's like, once I get to Eurovision and I win Eurovision, like people will stop laughing at me and people will respect me, because he's kind of like a joke in his town, and he's kind of constantly failing, like comically, and like, anyways. So in the end, he gets to Eurovision through a series of like kind of crazy events, and he keeps failing, like even while he's there, and like just makes kind of a complete ass of himself. And but this love interest, Rachel McAdams, the character, I don't remember what her name was, but she just kind of stands by him, And I think, like, in the end, like, I was like weeping when we watched this recently with our Eurovision friends, and Marcia was like, "What is going on with you?" And I was like, "Well, like, I was like, I really identify with Lars," and she was like, "Why? Like, this character is like a joke." But it was like this moment where he realizes, like, this external validation that he's seeking is like so pointless, and like he already has what he needs and what he wants in this person who's been by his side the whole time. And I think, like, that, even though it's like this silly story, it's like this really, I think it is often a struggle for many people of like, oh, if this just happens, then people will like me, or people will respect me or whatever. And I think that's the trap sometimes I think I fall into when I'm on social media, is like, I'm like, oh, if like, like the Furniture Society, if they could just feature me, then people will respect me or whatever, which is like so silly, and I think, first of all, that is like an attainable thing for me, and it's not even that hard, but it's like, it's because I like, but it's like, that is the thing of like, oh, like but then if I like, then I come back to my local community and I'm like, oh, like my wife is in the shop with me, helping me finish these projects that I'm struggling on. I have this community at Highland that is like trying to help us do what we want. And I get to teach people woodworking, and I have these long-term connections. And so it's like, but then, yeah, so I think that, I'm getting lost a little bit in the way I'm explaining it, but it's like, it's really easy, I think, for me to get pulled out of what my goals are when I am exposed to that external validation model, I guess maybe is the way to say it, versus I stay more grounded when I'm in my local community, and I can kind of cut out some of that noise, because I can see what my true goals are. And like what we did with Rose, like just the six of us, like making a chair, like that was so fun and like valuable for me. And like, it wasn't like, oh, I'm going to become like, a chair maker. It was like, oh, I can learn this really cool skill from people who already know it. And there isn't really a goal necessarily to come out of that. So I don't know. I talked for a long time. Sorry, but yeah. I don't know if that's helpful to hear of like, yeah, because I know you've been kind of thinking about that, of sort of like how to fit in all of your interests, and like what would the goal be, to get into woodworking. And that's something we've talked about.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I think that's, I don't know, kind of a good, or just generally, I think kind of keeping straight what your goals are and always refocusing on that. I think it's such good advice, because I don't know, it's easy to kind of go down that rabbit hole. I think especially, I don't know, I think I've recently been transitioning out of a traditional career path into maybe a less traditional one. And so I think, kind of 5 years on a more traditional career path, it is very kind of instilled in you of kind of check the boxes, progress, like, yeah, climb the ladder. And so I think, even though I'm trying to, I guess, kind of transition out of that, and it's hard to not kind of get stuck back in that rut again. And I definitely know it's because I guess, I think with my woodworking, yeah, I think I've been a little unsure exactly what I want that to be in my life, and how much of kind of like my income or a career I want that to be, versus just kind of like I don't know. I mean, yeah, kind of first kind of just like a personal practice. And I do definitely often kind of feel self-conscious, I think, where it's like, well, I do really value woodworking, and I know I want it to be a major kind of thing in my life. And then it's kind of, I feel like once I take that step, it's easy to then start chasing after, oh, well, I need to check these boxes and have these external validations saying that I am legitimate and that I have like accomplished these things. And at least for me, I think that's a little bit of a distraction, because, kind of where I am in life, I'm probably not going to go take a year long kind of, woodworking kind of course or something like that, because I don't know if it quite fits into my life right now. And, I'm not sure if I could really go do kind of long artist residencies or some, well, maybe, I don't know. But anyway, so I'm not sure how much kind of checking those boxes of kind of qualifications really fits in my life. But I think I was investing a lot of energy in trying to figure out how to chase after those things. But then kind of coming back to my main goal of, well, really, I kind of just want to spend as much time as possible in the shop making chairs, because I just kind of love making chairs, and so why am I complicating it?
Totally.
Yeah, so I guess the last 2 months I've kind of been trying to focus on that. As like, okay, that's what I value and what I really enjoy. How do I kind of maximize my opportunity and my time to do that without trying to get caught up in what I think externally, I don't know, that needs to look like, but how can I, in my specific unique situation, kind of optimize that, or not even optimize, but kind of like not get distracted by those other things. Yeah, and so I think kind of, I think it's kind of a constant. I feel like it's like every week, it's kind of like, okay, wait, like recenter, like let's refocus on what choices that you're making and how is that kind of actually feeding towards the goal you want rather than the goal you feel like you should have, I guess.
Totally.
Yeah. So I don't know if you have similar experiences, Casey.
Well, this is just really making me think about how people, when like career coaches will talk about, start with the kind of life you want to have. Are you experience focused or are you career focused? And experience focused people are maybe more like Kat, where like I want to do the thing and I want to have my weekends off and my nights with my wife and I want to go on vacation when I want to. And career focused people tend to be more of like, how can I climb the ladder? How can I like maybe build this business out to be like a bigger, like, bordering on empire or something like that. And it feels like artists don't always give ourselves that grace to be like, I am an artist that wants to have more of a experiential life where I'm able to, have dinner at home when I want to, and I'm able to, I'm able to live the life I want to live. And it's not necessarily about like being the biggest name, it's not about that for me, but we don't always see what success looks like for those people because they're not the people that are getting thousands and thousands of likes on social media. Those are the people we have to see, but we're not seeing people that are actually on the ground doing the craft, doing the art every day, that aren't focusing on that, but are still just as much of a craftsperson, still as much of an artist professionally as someone that also spends, so much of their time marketing themselves on social media.
Yeah, I always wonder about that, where it's like, yeah, I feel like once you get to be really big and well known, it seems like you probably are going to get pulled in so many different and various directions that it's like I don't know, it ends up taking time away from your art or your craft or kind of whatever you love. And I guess I definitely saw that a lot kind of in industry. Or yeah, so I was a chemist, and like what I loved the most was just actually doing reactions and making new molecules, and kind of like the pure science and kind of creation and creativity of chemistry itself. But it's very often, if you're successful and do well, the career growth is essentially you move beyond that and are, I don't know, mostly at a desk, not really doing chemistry anymore, which was not really appealing to me. And I think it's a very similar thing. I don't know, I think kind of within kind of the arts, and I guess maybe in a lot of things, where it is like once you become really successful at something and you build maybe an empire or a bigger company or any of these things, I feel like it takes you away from at least the thing that I want to be doing, which is just building and making the actual things. And so I feel like it is that kind of push and pull between, society pushing you to build and create and make things, build things bigger as far as like a company, which then I think takes away from at least what I think a lot of people value is the actual creation of the objects or the art or whatever it is. And so, I guess it's a good reminder for me of like, I kind of just refocus of like, okay, I don't need to build some big giant chair company because I'm probably never going to make any chairs. I'd rather just like, I don't know, make some chairs. Although I guess the flip side of that is now I've made too many chairs and they're filling up my house too quickly, and so I have to just stack them in the they're not usually stacked in the corner, but yeah, I guess then you end up with a lot of chairs. So I guess there's a balance to be found of spending enough time building a company or I don't know, some way to sell the things you make, but maybe not have that be your only priority, I suppose. Or at least for me, I guess maybe that's kind of what I've been thinking about.
Totally. Some way to also maybe monetize the hobby, like at least regain back your investments or something.
Yeah.
Although I know a lot of us are like, the goal is also to spend more time in making some sort of money to like actually thrive off of. So it's so complicated trying to find that balance.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I feel like it is just a lot of moving interconnected pieces, and yeah, I don't think there's any perfect solution to it. And I think it's probably so different for everyone, kind of the optimal level. So yeah, so I guess I don't know. I think it's good. I guess I'm kind of in that stage where I'm just trying to explore lots of different avenues and see lots of different things, and then it's kind of like keep what works. Yeah, try not to get too attached to the things that don't. Yeah, and see where it all goes. And again, I think a lot of that, I think, really comes back to having community. I mean, having connections, I don't know, to kind of find the opportunities to sell things or just kind of like know about opportunities or everything like that. I think I'm definitely finding that, again, coming back to community, the value of community is very significant. And I think, especially just talking to those people, because I mean, Kat, it's been so helpful having you as kind of a sounding board and talking through some of these things. Because I mean, I think you've been kind of in this industry a lot longer than, or kind of in the woodworking world much longer than I have, and have been thinking about some of the things longer than I have. So yeah, I really value kind of your input and opinion. And so it is, yeah, I think a good to find community, because people have probably thought about a lot of these things before, which I think is really cool. So yeah.
Yeah, I think, well, one of the things I'm going to take away from this conversation for sure is like what you said about like kind of almost like it's like a weekly practice of kind of like regrounding yourself back into like what your values are. And I think that's what I get from Highland of like, oh, like Tuesday night I'm working with people and that grounds me in this way of like, it brings me back to like why I love what I'm doing. And like, it's interesting kind of bringing in like sort of what you said too, Casey, of like, I've never really thought about that, like career focused versus experience focused. And I'm definitely experience focused and not career focused, obviously. But I think, yeah, like I've never thought about it that way. And I think that idea of like, we don't see those people a lot because they're not, they don't end up maybe getting, because that's one thing I think that I struggle with, like in my own mental health and like self image of like, I have started over so many times. And so I have been at the bottom of the pay scale so many times, and like I'm in my mid 40s and most of my peers are like at a certain level in their career. And so it's sometimes it's really easy for me to be like, oh, like I don't have value, or I whatever, and like I can really get in my head about it. But then if I think about what my values are, is like I have spent so much energy into my relationship with my wife, and that is very important to me. And my family, and my family moved here, and now I live close to them, and like these things, and my friends, are like these things that are like very important to me, of like I've sort of been able to build the life that I want. And like, yeah, maybe I don't necessarily have all these accolades to show for it, but it's also like, it's always interesting to me, like certain people who put all this energy into a career, and then their partner is like, will you go to therapy with me? And they're like, no. And I'm like, but like there's this, like there's your career and then there's your life, and like these things, like, it's interesting to me, like, where people will put value. And to me, like, so much of my life is my family, and that I put an equal amount of energy there as I do into my work. And that has always been a really important balance for me. But I think sometimes you don't really get pats on the back for that, right? Other than the pats on the back are like, your relationships are good, but I think, sometimes it can be like, oh, why aren't you pushing yourself harder or whatever? And so I don't know. This has been a really helpful conversation for me, because I think sometimes I do, I don't know. Family is super important to me. And so I've always put that, I think, above sometimes even career. And so I think sometimes I'm like, oh, am I doing the right thing? But it's like understanding where, like, I don't know. Yeah, I feel like I'm rambling now, but this has been helpful for me to sort of reground myself. So I appreciate it.
Yeah. I guess that kind of makes me think of, this is slightly tangential, but I don't know, made me think of it. I think I have some people in my life who are, I think, at this point, really into traveling and kind of constantly want to be traveling. I certainly enjoy traveling. I like trips, but I think especially if I'm gone for more than, I don't know, 10 days or so, it's kind of just really miss my life. And it's like, I don't really want to be traveling all the time. I guess it just kind of was like a nice reminder of like, oh yeah, you've like built a life that you enjoy and like don't want to be away from for too long. And I think there's a ton of value in that. And I guess I think that maybe gets to like a lot of things, like with trying to like really build a career, really build this other thing that kind of takes you away from life. Always seems a little weird to me, because it's like, well, your life, you're kind of stuck. It's can't really get away from your life. So it's like, you should probably spend some time focusing and making sure to build a life that you want to be living. And at least for me, it then makes it a lot easier, because it's like, well, when I'm just home and living, it's like pretty good, all things considered, so I think it's kind of, maybe a similar impulse or similar thought of, I think it's important and good to focus on those things, family and kind of, the simple things, even if it's not necessarily what you get the accolades for. But I guess there is kind of the inherent internal, I don't know, kind of accolades you build for yourself out of it, maybe. I don't know if that sentence makes any sense, but like, I don't know.
Yeah, no, that actually really resonates with me, because I think one of the things I've never lived in the same town as my family as an adult, and I've always missed the ordinary part of being with my family. Like, like my mom and I went to the gym yesterday, and like, that was so, it brought me so much joy, much more than like going on a trip or going to visit or being together at Christmas. Is like, that ordinary. I feel like we don't place enough value on the ordinary sometimes, I guess. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah, I feel like it definitely resonates with me, because I felt like for a long time, even with like social media, like just day-to-day life, like comparing myself to what other people are doing and feeling like I'm not doing it right. Like, I'm also a homebody, and I get so much joy out of like making and like using my hands and being creative in ways, and spend all my resources making that happen, and then being like, why am I not in Thailand? Or like, why am I not traveling all the time like other people? Like, what's wrong with me? And when I came to the realization that like, what would make me happiest is to just like nest and have like a workshop and like work on things and go, hang out with my friends. Like, well, that's what's wrong with that, and being like, well, I can't be like some like photography influencer, but and do I really want to be? What's wrong with just doing it for fun or like on the side? So it's so much more freeing, I think, being able to recognize that and be like, yeah, kind of like ordinary, mundane crafts person, or not mundane, but just not everything has to be big, flashy neon lights, and that's okay too, and that's where I'm comfortable.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's nice. I don't know. I think about this a lot. Well, I guess it was maybe my last Substack post. I briefly talked about how like one of my favorite things in the whole world is like early in the morning if I can like just go to the shop and like spend like a little bit of time just kind of when it's quiet out, especially if it's like in the spring when the birds are just starting to wake up and it's just like quiet and calm and just like do some like I don't know, kind of a little bit of work. Um, yeah, like there's something about that like time and that piece that is just like so good to me. Like I just love it so much, and so I think it's kind of like finding more time for that in my life never seems like a bad thing. And so it's like even if yeah, it's not big and flashy and showy, but it's I don't know, it's real good as far as I'm concerned. So
You're really great at documenting it, though. I was really stoked to watch the video at the end of that post and then find your YouTube.
yeah.
How did you get started with making videos? Because I don't know if you have a background in it, but it seems like that style of short form documentary just comes naturally.
Yeah. Yeah, so at least in kind of its current iteration, it's relatively recent. I guess maybe 2 years ago now. Um I guess the only camera I had was I had an iPhone 6 still, so it was like not a great camera, and it was what I was like, okay, I should start documenting at least the pieces I'm building to like have a bit of a portfolio. I was like, I can't take good pictures or pictures that are as what good as I would like them to be with this, and so I invested in like a real camera. I guess for the first time, and initially was just taking essentially just finished piece photography or kind of pictures, just to kind of document. I don't really remember what the initial impetus to kind of start playing around with video was. Um, yeah, but I guess I don't know. I just thought it'd be fun, and so was kind of playing around a little bit. And it's kind of one of those things where it's like, as soon as I started, it was like, oh, I really love trying to capture these processes and kind of like the feeling and the vibe that I get in the workshop that I think is so that I kind of wanted to share. Yeah, and so I think got pretty into it and um, was just a lot of experimenting and a lot of playing around, and a lot of I think a lot of bad deleted early stuff, especially I think trying to figure out the audio was really hard. I think just because I feel like especially with hand tool woodworking, I feel like the auditory component is such a big piece of kind of like how cool and how much I like it. Um, and so I think I struggled for a long time to try and capture that well, and then I think once I kind of got over that hump, I feel like I really hit my stride, and I guess making kind of process videos. Um, and so it did. Yeah, so that was kind of this current iteration of it, and I kind of really thought about it, but I don't know. After I'd been doing it for a few months, I remembered that in the I guess probably 10, 15 years ago, I used to do kind of slightly similar videos. I think at the point I had like a GoPro and like such a small memory card that I wasn't even taking video, but it was just like pictures every 3 seconds to kind of put these things together. I think some of them were for like chocolate making, and kind of some of them were. I think I made a few videos. I used to ride a giant unicycle, and so it was like riding trails on a unicycle. Um, and so I guess I've kind of just always had some kind of inclination or kind of love of trying to capture things like that, kind of like I don't know, process videos or kind of experiences and just trying to like get the like atmosphere and like the feeling it instills in me. Um, I think something about it just really scratches an itch of just it's so much fun. Um, and so I think I haven't actually made any videos recently. I just have been busy with trying to I guess cram too many things into life. But I was actually planning yesterday. I was in the workshop working on something, and I was like partway through this process. I was like, oh, it'd be cool to like make a little video of this. And then I was like, okay, I'll do it on the next piece. And then I like finished the piece I was on and realized it was the last one of the three I was making. I was like, oh crap, I guess I should have done it of this. That was the last one. So definitely hoping to try and find a little bit more time to make some videos because it's just fun. Yeah.
I'm in awe of like the seamlessness of the style of the video that you create that has like an ASMR kind of quality with the sound and like the sprinkling of the dust that's like coming off your work and then like the pile of shavings that's on the ground and the delicate nature of your work with your chairs and it sounds like with your chocolates too. Did you make like a conscious choice to kind of like steer towards like a delicate kind of like thoughtful brand, or is that just something that naturally came out of like how you exist?
Yeah, that's a good question. I guess it wasn't super conscious because I guess I hadn't really thought about this before. I guess at least with the videos, I suppose I have multiple times probably when I've talked to them about people, it's like often my goal is I just want to bring more chill vibes, I guess, like to the internet and to the world, which I think kind of gets to that where it's just like, I do like, it's like, let's all just slow down and like take a minute to enjoy, yeah, I guess like the simple beauty. I guess maybe it's on my mind, which is why I wrote about it recently on Substack. But I guess it gets back to that same last Substack I referenced earlier, where I think in that I was talking about just really how much joy it gives me when I do just kind of slow down and like the beauty and like the really simple small things that in some ways are really mundane, but it's just so cool. Like I don't know, just like I think like this chair is actually the one I was finishing when I wrote that last Substack, and it was just the wood from this. A lot of this chair, so like all the upper parts and the legs, came from a tree that fell, just kind of a few miles from my house, and it's a type of red oak, which I think typically people, I don't know, kind of poo-poo because it's not necessarily the prettiest, but it's a different species that I'd never worked with. And there's just like, I can't even quite put my finger on it yet, but there's like some clarity in the grain and of the wood that just was slightly different than I'd seen before. And it was just so, I don't know, cool. And I think just like really pretty. Yeah. So I guess maybe it is, I don't know, kind of just what I get really excited about is that kind of slow, intentional, maybe kind of, I don't know, that type of work and that type of stuff. And so I guess kind of is ultimately, I guess, really what I want to try and make videos that capture. Yeah, I don't know if that answered your question, but maybe.
Yeah, I think so. So.
Yeah, cool.
I think hearing you talk about it, like it's back to like what we were talking about of like the ordinary, right? Is like you're finding beauty in the ordinary, and you're sort of giving us a lens to that. And I think like what's interesting to me is like I think like that aesthetic is like not something I could attain. And so like I see that and I'm like, oh my God, like Duncan is so good at this. But it's interesting because it's actually like why would I attain that? Because it's your lens to your life and your work. And I think for me, my lens is very messy. And like what I love about life is like how messy it is. And I think that's like my work is sort of more like, it's just more chaotic and bold and like, and so I think sometimes like this last table that is like the saga of the table is like it was more clean, and then it was like the pictures I wanted to take, like Casey and I went to Finley and like we were on this like flooded field, and that was like I was like, oh yeah, like this feels right, because I was like I need like more chaos and mess, like it doesn't like, so it's but I think like I love watching your videos, and we'll link all to Duncan's work in the show notes, but like Duncan's videos are like slow TV, like if you've watched Norwegian slow TV, or like Jamie's not here, but Jamie loves this YouTube video of this woman in China who does like farming from the beginning. I can't remember her name, but like it's this, it's like the process of it. And I think it's interesting because like for me, I usually don't understand much about my work until I'm done and like look back. And so like when I'm in the process, like it's such I'm not really able to stop. And so like that was one of the things that was hard for me about social media, is that pressure to like show the process. And I think there are people, I was talking to Rose about this, and Rose put it really interesting of like there's process people and then there's idea people or something, and like obviously there's never just two people, but like we love to be like there are two types of people. And but I think hearing you talk and like watching your work sort of develop, it's like I think you really love. I am wondering if you really like the process of it, and you find so much beauty in that. You know, like what you're talking about, like going and having coffee and being at the bench, and like, you know, versus for me, it's like I I think I'm very idea driven, and like once I have the idea, like, like I have so many unfinished projects because I'm like, that idea was so good, and then I'm like, I get about 60% done, and then I'm like, well, I've sort of gone through it versus like I'm a little less tied to the process of it maybe, and so maybe I need to take a little piece of like, maybe when I'm having trouble finish a project, I'll watch one of your videos and be like, remember the process is also beautiful, because I think sometimes I do lose the zest for it or something, because it does it ends up being a little more ordinary after you've like lost the novelty and excitement and dopamine of the idea, and then you're like, you know, like Casey, we worked on this in the table, and you're like, I just want to be done, and it's your dopamine's gone, and you're like, oh my god, why am I still working on this? But if you can find beauty in that process of like, right, like you were saying, Casey, like you found out a lot about yourself in that process, and so and I think that is like, once I'm done with the project, then I'm like, oh yeah, like this table was about me processing this like really intense thing that happened to me or whatever, like, you know. And if you can sit in that process and like really be more comfortable in it, I wonder, I'd be curious what that would be like for me, because I think the process is harder for me to find beauty in it maybe. So yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, you're definitely right that I definitely do really, I guess, yeah, revel in the process of the thing. Yeah, and I guess maybe that really informs a lot of kind of how I work. Because yeah, I mean, at this point, I'm pretty much completely a hand tool woodworker. I think initially it was more just that's all I had space for. I was moving a lot, and so I just couldn't really buy equipment and machinery, and didn't really know how to use it. Um, but now I'm at a point where it's like, if I wanted to, I could probably start investing in some. But I guess I'm pretty sensitive to sound. I don't particularly like loud stuff, and I think, yeah, I definitely, I don't know, like the kind of slowness and I guess the process that is hand tools, which I guess kind of gets at, yeah, maybe kind of my interest and love of the process. Yeah, I definitely do still, at the end of most projects, I feel like there's always that point in any project, no matter who you are or what it is, we're kind of near the end. You're just like, I hate this thing. I just wish it was done and gone, and I didn't have to look at it ever again. Yeah, so I don't know, definitely still get that as well.
Yeah.
So
I feel like you described that well in that burn pile Substack you wrote about.
yeah.
You know, like cheers going in the burn pile, but then you like came full circle and were able to finish it. So
Yeah.
yeah, well, I know we're at time, and I know you probably need to get on with your day, but I really appreciate you taking the time to chat with us. It was super fun. I feel like I feel like a different person. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, yeah. Yeah, thanks for having. Yeah, this was really fun. This is my first ever podcast, so thank you for letting me. Yeah, have my inaugural podcast experience. This was, yeah, I really enjoyed it. I think it's. I mean, again, I guess what I've said multiple times is I think creative community is. I'm learning is such an amazing and wonderful thing, and so I don't know. Having anytime I get to have conversations like this, I really enjoy them. So I guess thanks for having a podcast where that is happening more, and thank you for letting me participate in that, because this was a lot of fun.
Of course, it was lovely to have you. And for all of our listeners, don't forget to subscribe to our newsletter. That'll eventually come out at some point. And follow us on Blue Sky and Instagram and YouTube. Anything else I'm forgetting, Kat?
Yeah, well, so Duncan, the way folks can find you, you have Substack and Blue Sky and your YouTube channel. Is that?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and I guess I have pretty inconsistent branding across all of them, so I guess maybe we can just put links yeah, in here rather than trying to list off what they all are. But yeah, those are probably, the YouTube has been a little dormant, but hopefully that'll change a little bit. And then yeah, I think been focusing a little bit more on trying to write more stuff. So Substack, I've been trying to share thoughts and ideas there a little more regularly. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much. And yeah, we'll stay updated with Duncan's work via the links. And yeah, we'll see all the possums next time. And thanks for listening.
Yeah. Toodles possums.
Bye.
Toodles. Bye.